welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly.
And I'm Matt Freeman.
And after you listen to this podcast, you'll die in 7 days or something.
Ring. Your phone's ringing. Better answer it.
Wait. Hey, Matt, phones don't ring anymore.
Oh. I'll text you. Hey, Siri, text Scott 7 days until you die.
Nice. This week on the show, our 10-part series Deconstructing the Film of Gore Verbinski continues with the director's third feature film. We're going to be talking about 2002's The Ring. Then we'll reveal the results of last week's Council of Doof episode on In Bruges. We'll let you folks know how everyone voted and if In Bruges will be entered into the canon of greatest films of all time. I don't think the result will surprise you on this one, but we will be talking about it.
Sounds good.
It's going to be a stuffed episode, so let's get right into it, Matt. Let's talk about Gore Verbinski's The Ring.
Have you heard about this videotape that kills you when you watch it? You start to play it, and it's like somebody's nightmare. And as soon as it's over, your phone rings. And what they say is, you will die in 7 days.
Katie told you she was gonna die.
She told me. She said she didn't have enough time.
Matt, what is The Ring all about?
A journalist must investigate a mysterious videotape which seems to cause the death of anyone 1 week to the day after they view it.
This movie was written by Aaron Kruger, who also wrote 3 of the Michael Bay Transformers sequels. So, you know.
Wow.
Cool.
Wow. That's interesting.
It's just a fun fact I learned when looking stuff up. This was based on the novel by Koji Suzuki and as well the 1998 Japanese film, which I learned, when I was looking this up, I called it Ringu last week because that's what I just thought the name of the movie was. And turns out the movie was just called The Ring, but in Japanese. And then when they translated it to English for America, they just called it Ringu, which feels insulting to the Japanese to me.
That's very bizarre.
Yeah, I don't quite understand why they did that.
That's sort of surreal. Yeah, okay. I never heard that before.
Yeah. This movie was starring Naomi Watts, Martin Henderson, and David Dorfman. So with the exception of Naomi Watts, who, I guess in 2002, she was pretty big. She had been in Mulholland Drive and some other stuff. She wasn't like a superstar. She wasn't in King Kong yet, you know?
Uh-huh, right.
But so not hugely known actors. And I think that was kind of the point of the movie. Or at least that was one of the things Verbinski wanted to do with this movie was he didn't want a bunch of really recognizable superstars.
Yeah, that's what's kind of interesting about it is like it's sort of this classic that kind of spurred a whole phase of American horror movies that were trying to copy this style, which is, of course, more or less taking a lot of its cues from Japanese horror movies.
Yeah.
But Verbinski definitely nails it. And okay, look, full disclosure here, I don't really watch scary movies. So anything I've seen The Ring before. I think I've seen The Grudge, and I think that's probably the end of my pale girl with long black hair film watching experience.
Sure.
I don't know if you watch a whole lot more scary movies than me.
I do.
You do.
I don't know how many of this particular genre of, the 90s Japanese horror that made its way over to America films I've seen. I've definitely seen The Grudge. I've seen all of The Grudges. I think I've seen most of The Rings. Not much else in this particular genre.
Yeah. So, I'm just saying that because I'm going to be reacting to this movie and I think it'll be fun to talk about it in context of being a Gore Verbinski film. Mm-hmm. But I don't watch this kind of movie. And so,
sure.
But it does seem to me, just as a person who is aware of culture, that this movie was incredibly impactful, actually.
Yes. It definitely does start that whole wave of, hey, people in America seem to like Japanese horror. Let's bring it over here. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of these, I think one of the things I kind of want to talk to you about is how, yes, this is definitely like setting a trend, but I also think this movie is very much, it feels a response to the success of The Sixth Sense as well to me. Just like, I think it feels like at times Verbinski is trying to do a little bit Shyamalan here. And then like, I think the performance they're getting out of the kid is very specifically trying to be unnervingly creepy in the same way that Haley Joel Osment was in that movie before you figured out what was going on. Like, this feels like a movie that definitely came out after The Sixth Sense, but is also pulling in all this Japanese horror mythos to it as well.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. The thing that I was noticing while watching the movie is how the color palette is just so much more bleak and dreary.
Oh yeah,
than anything else that Verbinski does. And the thing about The Sixth Sense is it also has a very muted color palette, but it's not in the same space. Like, this is a more blue movie, and I think The Sixth Sense is a more yellow movie.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, still, I agree. Going for more of a like emotionally muted sort of slow burn. I mean, the thing that I was thinking while watching this movie was that this is actually like a detective story, or you know, like an investigation, like a mystery. It's a good mystery story. And I've seen it before this viewing, but while watching it this time, I found that the thing that was keeping me kind of glued to the screen and kind of compelled was like, I don't actually remember exactly how this ends. Like, I don't actually remember the exact details of like what the deal was with Samara and Samara's mom and everything. And like, I was really invested in finding that out. And then so there was the mystery that had me invested. And then there was also like, I don't actually remember exactly how she lives and who dies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was invested in the character stakes too. So like the movie successfully hooked me, just like in terms of plot and character. And then on top of just being an effective core story, it also is incredibly good, like horror story. The you know, creepiness and dread and fear of everything. And then when it actually goes full bore, you know, full climactic horror, it's incredibly effective there.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I have so many things I want to say about this movie. We said a couple weeks ago that I was a little bit worried that this movie had been so memeified that it had like, it on its own outside of the memes had lost any punch or effect it had. That was what my fear. And I am so thrilled to say that is not the case at all. I watched this movie last night. I had to wait until my wife went to bed because she does not watch scary movies at all. She's watched even less than you, Matt, although I think she has seen this movie and says, no, I'm not doing it again. I know myself. I know what would happen. So basically I had to sit in our living room by myself in the middle of the night alone watching a movie that I've seen, God, probably a dozen times, to be honest with you, because back in the early 2000s, I don't know if the kids today will believe this, but we didn't have all the movies in the world at our fingertips. So like, we had movie channels, and if I would just turn on like HBO and Cinemax and Showtime and whatever was on. If I couldn't sleep at night, I would watch it. And The Ring was one that circulated on those movie channels over and over and over again. And so I feel like I watched this movie a lot. My point is that even having seen it that many times, I was still really creeped out. I was still really scared, and I was still really invested in the story, which you're absolutely right, is a mystery story.
Yeah. Well, so it was better than I remembered it. And I think the reason is exactly what you said, which is I think I probably watched it on TV. And then my way of metabolizing scary movies tends to be that I walk in and out of the room just to not feel the emotions. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the first time I watched it, I probably missed chunks of it. Like I actually remember just not understanding what was happening when the horse jumps off the boat and thinking it was borderline like funny. like what in the hell is, like, why is the horse jumping off the boat, which of course is explicitly set up as being like, this is like you understand exactly what's happening. So this is probably the first time I've like sat down and made myself watch the movie beginning to end, and it was better than I remembered it, but that's just because I watched it wrong before.
Sure. Man, that horse scene, that is one image that sticks in my mind. That I don't know what it was, but the horse jumping over the rail of the boat and then its back legs like catching on the rail and then just slamming it into, like, that image is fucked in my head. It's so disturbing. Like when she gets on the ferry, I was like, oh no, the horse. And I knew it was going to happen from then on. And it's just like, that's the interesting thing about this movie, Matt, is that, this is a horror movie in which we basically know that our main character is safe for the majority of the thing, right? Like the movie has an established countdown. You're going to die in 7 days. She's not going to die before that time. That's not what happens in this. That's not what they've established in this. And out of all the characters in the movie, she's the one that watched the tape earlier. So we know her boyfriend is fine, or is going to be fine, at least until the point that she dies, right? And we know that her son is going to be fine, at least until the point she dies. So there's no like actual danger of like death in this horror movie. There's the looming danger of it, the inevitability of it, but there's no like in the immediacy of creepy scenes, there's no like feeling of someone could die at any moment.
Yeah.
And so what the movie has to do instead is just like pummel your vision with incredibly well designed creepy set pieces that just work on you. Like, I mean, let's just talk about the tape by itself. The tape on its own is just really off-putting and scary. Like, just I like I said, I've seen this movie so many times, which means I've seen that tape multiple times because you see it multiple times throughout the movie, and it's just incredibly upsetting. Like it's this assault of weird, awkward images. The woman in the mirror, like who locks eyes with you. It's just it's all disturbing. Like
There's another thing I noticed, once again, noticing things because I have a bigger TV now than I had in the 2000s when I probably had like a 20-inch TV. And the one bit in there, it's like a writhing mass of something that might be worms or something, and then it like flickers, and then it's a writhing mass of people.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'd ever noticed that before. Of course, not that I've watched it that many times. I also love the fact that the video, whenever the first time they play it, it's just the tape playing on the screen, filling the screen with minimal, if not zero, interruptions. And then it's over. And then of course the movie ends with the implication that the characters have shown you the movie and you're going to die now, which is great.
Yeah. And then you hope that your phone doesn't ring as soon as the movie turns off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's always a fun element. I think in terms of the story and just everything in general, I love that nobody is really carrying the idiot ball at any point. Like the main character is like understandably skeptical at the beginning, but then like as she sees freaky things, I think like at a reasonable pace is like, okay, this is actually weird, and I can't just ignore this. And like and because I think that's a very fine line to walk in a horror movie, because there's so many horror movies where like the main character is like, oh, that's odd, I don't remember leaving my keys out on the counter. Oh well, and like, but like that kind of thing happens like 14 times, and then and you're just like, God, you're so stupid. And then there's like the other end where the character is like unrealistically genre savvy, and I think this is like the perfect, like just characters acting like real characters. And then later in the movie, when they're like desperate and believe that their survival hinges on solving the mystery, they're like properly willing to take risks, because they're like, look, I'm going to die if I don't figure this out, so I'm going to break into this guy's house and I'm going to steal these files from the from the hospital and all these things. They're like, yeah, that's correct, you should do that.
I agree. So many times in horror movies, the tension is created just by characters behaving stupidly.
Yeah.
And I don't think this movie relies on it. I mean, she only shows the tape to one other person, and that's because she hasn't 100% bought into the bullshit into it yet. And then as soon as she does, she like, I love the scene where her ex's new girlfriend comes over and she like grabs the tape and gets out of there because she's totally bought into it by that point, and she's not going to let anyone else watch it at all. It's just like she fully invests in it right away. And it's I think it's because the movie establishes right away that 4 teenagers died at the same time, Which the only stretch of believability I think I have in this movie is that she's the only one investigating that. That like no one else would be, hey, these 4 teens hung out and then a week later they all died on the same night in separate places. That's weird. Maybe we should look into that.
That's true. But what feels very 90s about it is like information is hard to obtain.
Sure.
And so like if that happened now, it would be like a Twitter story, but like like she has to go look at microfiche in a library.
True. Yeah, I mean that's the most interesting thing about this movie that I really want to spend the most of our time talking about is that this is a snapshot of a very specific point in time, right? This is we have VHS tapes, we have landline phones still. This is pre-internet. I mean, it's not pre-internet because she uses the internet to investigate all this stuff, but like it's like very, very lo-fi internet. I love seeing her search engine there. It was so amazing. I mean, this is a movie that like, I think in another 10 years, kids watching it will not understand some of the technology that's happening here. I mean, just like the creepiness of television snow is a thing that TVs don't do anymore.
Yeah.
They just like they just don't like unless you've specifically fucked up your TV and you have it on a specific setting. It's not going to do that anymore. Yeah,
it's difficult to get a modern because like most, it's hard to even buy a TV now that isn't a smart TV.
Yeah,
and the smart TVs, you would have to like tune into your cable box and then go to a dead channel somehow.
Yeah.
But I agree. That's kind of funny. I can't show this to my kids yet, but I am kind of looking forward to showing them like movies like this. I don't know. I'm thinking like when did like The Net come out? Because I'm thinking about the early era of
Sandra Bullock's The Net.
Yeah, right.
Let's see, 1995.
So that was much earlier than this. It's just it's just funny to me to imagine showing them the movies from like the era where they were first figuring out how to depict the internet in movies. I mean, I actually think this movie does a good job of it because it's very it's simple. It's just like search engine box, type it in, click search, and I like what Verbinski does here, where he's very deliberately like following, like he's like showing what she types and then showing her mouse move over the like submit button.
Yeah,
and there's I noticed a lot of like attention paid to like interfaces, which I guess makes sense for a movie like this, but like you sort of get the sense that like so I think I can think of multiple examples actually. So like first example that I noticed in the movie was when her phone rings and a message is left and she moves her hand over to possibly push the play button, and you think she's going to push the play button, and then she pushes the delete button, which is right next to the play button. And that was a scene that was a moment where I was like, okay, clearly like this is the sort of thing that they do in movies where they find exactly the right phone so that they can do this trick where the delete button and the play button are right next to each other, and they're right and also you can see the words delete and play visibly on your screen, and like it's a perfect prop, right?
Yeah, they probably had a whole meeting where they brought like 6 different phones and said, which is the phone you like the best, Mr. Verbinski?
Exactly. And then there's multiple scenes where she's using some kind of machine to play the tape.
Yeah.
And in all of these cases, there's also a sort of visually clear way in which she's operating the machine, and like the camera will actually show like what buttons she's pushing.
Yeah.
I just thought this was a neat kind of attention to detail thing where it's just making the whole thing feel more real and more tactile, because we're getting to know like the intimacy of all of these things. It makes it, I don't know, it makes it a lot less sterile than it would be, I think, if it was just close-ups of like her face and then close-ups of the screen of what she's looking at. Instead, it's intercut with like the actual manual operation of the machines.
You're so right, because like, I mean, just there's insert shots when the VCR is used, when the tape is put in the VCR, when you press play, when she makes copies of it, there's like, he puts in very deliberate inserts where you see her pressing the play button on one and the record button on the other. And then he repeats that same shot, except she's holding her son's hand to have him make the copy. When she's analyzing the film. Like we do these very close insert shots on the knob, the fast forward and rewind knob. You're so right.
Yeah.
There's really huge attention to detail paid to this stuff. And this kind of, I don't know if this exactly gets into a point I wanted to talk to you about, but the theming of this movie is interesting. And I don't think it exactly works, but I want to talk about the theming of the movie, and then I want to talk about the new metaphor I've created for the movie because I don't think the theming works.
Yeah, I think that we're probably mostly on the same page here in the sense that you correct me if you disagree, but it seems like the point of the movie thematically is supposed to be like, you know, listen to your children, even like if they seem weird and creepy, then it's because they're trying to communicate something.
Yeah.
And you should let children have their voice no matter what that is. And you should obviously take care of children and not murder them. And like it's important to listen, basically. And then the end of the movie sort of dramatically swerves. So
I actually think it's a little bit more than that too, because I think Verbinski inserts these shots multiple times that seem to be a commentary on our obsession with television and obsession with screens a little bit, which is hilarious and cute, coming from 2002 when we have so many more screens now.
Right.
But I mean, like there's that scene where she's out on the balcony and looking across into the apartment complex across the way, and like Verbinski takes the time to show Naomi Watts observe every single house that is available to be seen in this apartment complex has someone sitting glued in front of a TV. So I think you kind of comment on this obsession with television and this you need to listen to your children idea, and like combined the thing is you need to listen to your children, and in the world in which everyone is only paying attention to the TV, a child's method of communicating to you is only through the creation of TV, of things, right? Of a video, of a drawing, of these, like, so that's, you are obsessed with this stuff, and it forces your child to scream out to you through these devices to get your attention. And I think that's an interesting idea. Again, I don't think it works in 2021, and I don't think it works because what you said, the twist of this movie, which I love. This is the thing I'm so unsure of. I'm so conflicted about, because on the one hand, I think the twist is one of the greatest parts of the movie. Mm-hmm. On the other, it completely undercuts its whole point, because the twist is that, as the little boy says, you weren't supposed to help her.
Yeah, she's just an evil supernatural entity.
Yeah.
And always was, actually.
Yeah, like from the very beginning. Like, and I love the way the movie plays this, because there's that wonderful scene where they're watching the tape of her being tested, and like from the framing of it, from this poor little sad girl in the middle screen, like everything in your head is screaming, this poor girl, what are they doing to her, right?
Yeah.
This poor misunderstood girl who has some power she doesn't understand, and her parents are scared of her. Everyone's scared of her. They hate her, and then they kill her. And then, like every other ghost story, every other scary story ever written, you need to get the ghost their peace, and then everything will be fine. And this movie says, nope, because when they said you're hurting people, you don't mean to hurt people, and she responds, but I do. And I'm sorry. And it's I text this to you after I watched the movie, but it's like the greatest double meaning in the world.
Yeah.
Because the first time you watch the thing, he says you don't mean to hurt people, and she says, but I do. And your guess there is that she's not saying, but I do mean to hurt people. She's saying, but I do hurt people. I am hurting people, right, and I'm sorry for that.
Yeah.
But no, she's saying, no, I do mean to hurt people.
So I'd have to go back and listen, but I think there's actually two different line reads. Like the first,
interesting.
I think the first time it's I might get it slightly wrong, but I think the first time it's like, but I do, and I'm sorry, but it won't stop. Mm-hmm. And then the second time it's, but I do, and I'm sorry, but it won't stop. And the chaining of the clauses together is what is what changes the meaning of it.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, all these moments work, right? Where the boy is like, you weren't supposed to help her. She never sleeps. And then you, of course, get the wonderful scene where her ex-boyfriend dies terribly.
Yes.
And of course, the moment where Samara walks out of the TV, which is just such a good set piece.
Oh God. Oh my God. Yeah. Like I've seen that before, but I just I had to appreciate the mastery of it on a directing and an acting level. Like I love that he is like horrified, but he's actually walking up to the television because he's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then it takes until she literally, her hand comes out, and then he reacts exactly the way he should of
right.
being utterly horrified.
I also love that Verbinski really hid from us the result of how she's killing these people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like she basically makes them see something that like warps their face horribly and they die terrified, right?
Uh-huh.
And we see both of what their faces look like, but he doesn't show it to us. Like we never see it in the moment. We always see it in flashes after the fact. And it's always like a really quick flash. And I just love that he held that. It makes it even more creepier because like those faces, again, like I remember the first time I saw this movie and I remember when they flashed to the teenage girl and what her face looked like. And that is burned into my head. And it's because it's only like a brief, like second flash. It's like 3 frames and then gone. It's such a great choice to do it that way.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. When I was a kid, we used to watch the X-Files, which is probably why I don't watch scary movies now. But like there are certain things from the X-Files, certain images like from the Fluke Man episode where I can still like play a tape of certain moments of that episode. And it's because they were extremely quick flashes of horrifying visual imagery.
Mm-hmm.
Probably at the time because they knew that their Fluke Man suit didn't look very good and they didn't want you to look at it for too long. But yeah, like I agree. There's something about doing things in flashes that works really well for horror.
Yeah. But to circle around to her point, the problem with this ending is that it completely kills everything they were doing with the theming. Because there's this really beautiful moment where she realizes that, hey, my son has been trying to communicate to me that something's not right with him and I haven't been listening. Like the scene we meet Naomi Watts' character in is when she's going to school and her teacher, or her son's teacher, is showing her all the drawings he's been making and she's completely shrugging them off, right? He's like, he's just processing it. You don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about it at all.
He'll be fine.
He'll be fine. And she's not listening. She's not listening to what he's saying to her. And so the whole plot of the movie, her internal stakes is getting to a point where she, through this process, understands that her son has been crying out for her because he's not well. He like his father has abandoned them and he's not doing well. And she's always gone. She's driven and she's always at work. And so it's this beautiful moment that I think is really earned actually in the story.
Yeah, I mean,
and then we're like, nope, actually, she's just evil, and that's all.
Yeah,
and I guess you could argue it technically doesn't ruin the theme because her takeaway remains, but it does just feel like it's emotionally cutting the theme's legs out from under it.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's like the movie ends with you feeling what it seems like the movie was building up to of, they've freed her and now she has justice and now her story has been told, and then just keeps going after that ending in a way where you realize that she's a demonic entity, and it was always there the whole time. Like it doesn't quite, like that's the thing is I don't actually want to be too hard on it because like she's did a lot of horrible stuff. Like she wasn't the sort of ghost that you sometimes see in a ghost movie where it's like, oh, the ghost was, by shaking the chest of drawers, the ghost was just trying to get you to open it to see that the photograph of the murderer was inside. It's like, no, she just like drove people insane who were just in the house when she was murdering other people. Like she's clearly like an evil ghost. And so the moment when, in fact, see, I can't ever watch this movie for the first time again. But when Naomi Watts is in the well, it's definitely extremely creepy, and like you don't feel like the movie doesn't fully convince you that everything's gonna be fine. I don't think. that this is the problem though, is I knew how the movie was going to end, so I can't go back to what I actually thought the first time I saw it.
Interesting.
But I feel like I wasn't relaxed after that happened. Like just I don't know, just the subtleties of cinematic language can tell you like I don't know if this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like this is the end. I don't feel the tension has released fully. But yeah, I don't know. All of that being said, I do wonder what the point is. Yeah. But no, so sorry, just to like loop back to what you're saying about her son. Like, I think it's great how like her son is this extremely competent and independent child, which is commented on repeatedly.
Yeah.
And is just really evident in the movie.
Again, I think this is channeling Haley Joel Osment's Sixth Sense, like where he is kind of creepily adult in some ways.
But they're making this a plot point, and it's not just like, oh, he is this way. It's like she is, like you said, this hard charging, workaholic basically. And so when he demonstrates more and more self-reliance, she's just like, oh, this is great. I love having a kid who's totally self-reliant and who I don't have to do any work for.
Yeah.
And that is shown in the film to be like the problem. Like she realizes like, oh, this is sort of a form of being neglectful by just being like, oh, you want to do everything? Sure, I'll let you do everything. You can just go to school by yourself in the rain or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's her metaphorically leaving him way up a high ladder in a barn with a TV, right? Yeah. Like she is allowing other things to do the parenting for her. It's not specifically TV. I kind of wish maybe they tied that in a little more textually, that maybe like he's watching TV all this. I guess he is technically. We see him watching TV a lot, and that's how he watches the tape in the first place, because she's passed out and he's bored and not being parented and just finds a tape and says, okay, I'll watch this.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I mean, she foists him off onto, basically anybody who will watch him.
Yeah,
like his cousin and that. Yeah, just like yeah.
I mean, he's like, we see that he's like super, super, super close with his cousin.
Yeah,
like they're like she says to the teacher that this is his best friend, and I mean, they never come right out and say it in the movie, but the implication is because she's been parenting him more than his mother has, because like she had a standby babysitter that would always come take care of her son whatever she was doing.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there's so many times in the movie where, she's off doing something and maybe you wonder, maybe you don't, but it's always in the back of your head. You're like, and where's the boy now? Like, is he at school? Is he just alone in the apartment? Like, did she drop him off with someone? Like, I guess the main time that I thought of that was when she dreams that she's calling, I guess, her sister to watch him, but then that was a dream, so it didn't actually happen. And then he's not with her later, and she's like, wait, and you're like, wait, so did she actually call the sister later, or where's the boy? Yeah, but I think this is all borderline. Like I think it's intentionally being suggested to you to wonder about these things.
Sure. Well, and I mean, it's interesting because I think it feels like to me earlier in the movie they wanted you to think there was something extra about him, like like I think the movie kind of wants to play with the idea that maybe he has some power, something like Samara did, and then there's this feeling of simpatico between these two beings, because I mean, it is certainly true that he watches the tape, Samara's like talking away to him. She's not talking to Naomi Watts, not really. She like found this kid and is like, oh, a kid, I like children, I'm gonna fuck with this kid because I'm evil. But and we don't really understand the fullness of the why of that, but they definitely have a connection beyond what we see Samara have with anyone else in the story.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's actually to the movie's credit that it doesn't try to explain a lot of these things, but
no, I agree. Yeah.
He's drawing creepy things before he watches the tape, and so you have to wonder if like he's not getting some shining magic reflection off of his cousin, and and then like a little bit, like you said, a little bit of extra communication from the ghost, maybe because he's a kid, but maybe because he has some particular sensitivity of his own. And I think it's actually good that we're just kind of left to wonder that and not really be sure exactly why.
Can we talk about his cousin for a bit and the choices she made? She watches this tape, right? She watches this tape and is told she's going to die in 7 days. And what does she decide to do with this information? I'm going to fucking tell my 8-year-old cousin that I'm going to die in 4 days. I'm going to tell him, and I'm going to keep telling him to the point where he's traumatized by it and is drawing pictures of me dying and being buried under the earth. What were you thinking, teenage girl?
Yeah.
Why was that a good move? Like, either she's like doing it, like, you have to assume she's doing it jokingly, right? Like, she's like, I'm going to die because I watched this tape. And she doesn't actually buy it. But obviously it's really disturbed this boy.
I guess I never thought about that, Scott. I will say, so, man, I don't know how to frame this exactly. The beginning of the movie is so weird to me. The beginning of the movie feels like a different movie.
It feels like a very classic horror movie opening. It feels like the opening of Scream, which is specifically designed to be like a horror movie classic opening.
It feels exactly like Scream. I wasn't going to say that, but I was thinking that it feels just like Scream. Yeah, like it feels, which of course, when did Scream come out? Scream came out in 96. So maybe it is referent. Like the fact that it's, two teenagers, that, a young woman alone in a house, there's phones involved. There's like even certain things about the lighting. Like it seemed like there were also some what seemed to me strange choices about like whose face the camera was on at certain times. Where you're kind of like, I want to see what the other character's face is doing at this point. And normally Verbinski would just do that, but I think he was kind of doing this particular stylistic thing.
Yeah, I mean, and the interesting part to me is I think, I just could be totally wrong, and someone that's watched this movie more closely than I have could correct me, but it feels like that scene, those things you're talking about are not done throughout the rest of the movie. This scene is very classic horror in that he's doing this thing where he's keeping the camera really close to the face of the teenagers to kind of cut off your field of view so you can't see everything else around them. So like you can't see, like you've got the cameras to their back and we don't know what's behind them. He also does the very classic horror movie thing where like you'll open a door, or in this case the refrigerator, and it'll block off the view of a long hallway. And so like that creeps you out because like what's going on? You've taken my sight away from me. I don't know what's there. I know you're going to close that fucking fridge and there's going to be something there. He does those. These are like classic, like if you're making a horror movie, these are the things you do. He also does this really, really shallow depth of field. So like, unless you're right next to the camera, everything behind you is a little bit blurry and out of focus. And that increases the tension as well because you don't have a clear view of thing. Like I wrote all this down when I was watching that opening scene, and I love the scene, but like I didn't see that throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I think he's not doing it through the rest of the movie. I agree with you. I noticed all the things you're talking about because the beginning scene is a straight up horror scene, but then we transition into more of a mystery tone where you're not actually supposed to be worried that there's going to be a jump scare.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's, again, like that's good. Like you're not supposed to be bracing for a jump scare for most of this movie. Like there's like a couple throughout the middle.
Yeah.
But even her pulling the hair out of her throat is not a jump scare. It's just one of those moments of like increasingly ramping creepiness.
Yeah, it's just scary. I mean, it's just scary. It's not tense, it's just scary.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's he knows exactly what kind of emotion he's gunning for at every part of the movie, and he uses the appropriate techniques in the appropriate places.
I wonder if this was literally like I'm gonna do the movie you expect for the first 15 minutes, and then I'm gonna do my thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna sucker you in with everything you expect when you walk into a theater to see a horror movie. And then from this point on, it's my movie. And it's like, you wonder, like, the suits were begging for a scene like this.
Yeah.
Like, cause like, this is like, people that go to horror movies are notorious for their inability to give the movies a benefit of a doubt. Like, like the just people walk out of a movie and say it wasn't scary, and when they say scary, they have a very specific definition of scary in their mind, and it's normally just jump scares. I mean, like, we bitch and moan about like the state of horror being just like jump scare fest these days, but like it's a cycle. Like it is a reciprocal thing. Like there are jump scare horror movies because jump scare horror movies are the ones that people go see, and so rinse repeat. And so I really do like having this conversation with you really makes me think he knew that this is what people were expecting, and so he got it out of the way at the very beginning, and then he got to tell, which you've accurately described as really just like a mystery. It's a mystery story, and it's a spooky mystery story, certainly, but yeah, I think you're spot on with that.
Right. And there's certainly more and less tense parts throughout the movie. Like so this is one of my least favorite things about scary movies, is that they're just exhausting. And this movie, I think it's still a scary movie. And so it's still sort of exhausting, but he modulates it. So like there's parts where you're just like, oh, we're investigating the tape, and this is kind of creepy, but I'm not really concerned that there's going to be a jump scare. And then contrast that with like she's talking to the horse, and you're like, oh shit, this is a bad idea. Mm-hmm. I don't even remember what happens here, and I know this is a bad idea. And then we switch into like these very, very close shots of the horse, these claustrophobic shots inside the horse's trailer, shots through the kind of grating of the trailer.
Yeah, and of the horse's eye. Horse's eyes are so spooky.
Exactly. So like completely different, completely change the way he's using the camera and turning up that tension, and then backing off of it again. And all this is being communicated through not just what's happening on the screen, but the way he's shooting it. And you kind of know, like when she's talking to the doctor who lives on that island, like, you can relax because of what the camera is doing, right? So just the amping up and then relaxing of the tension is extremely well done. I think I want to talk about like the climax. We already kind of did, actually, the climactic scene when Samara comes out of the TV.
Let's get into detail with it. Sure.
I want to get into detail, but I don't know if I'm competent to do so. Like it strikes me as being just perfect, because it seems like it's sort of like how we were talking about how there's like a line where on one side of the line the characters are too stupid, on the other side they're hyper competent and you don't believe it anymore. Mm-hmm. There's a line of how to do a scene like that, where on one side of the line of having the character climb out of the TV, it's corny. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, it's like, I don't know, it's like understated or something. But like he just like even having watched the movie before, I was like my hairs were standing up, like it's just so well executed in a scene framing, cut like cutting, and like where the camera is, like everything about it is just like perfect. And I don't know, other than just repeating that it's perfectly done, I'm not exactly sure what to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think you're right that the directing is good there. I think the character design of Samara, which of course becomes like the classic thing, right? Like this is why the Japanese film was so popular. This is the thing that kind of overtook pop culture, was that hair covering the face design. The way that she moves when she crawls out of the TV is so supernatural. The way that she looks, like her skin isn't just dead skin, it's kind of videotapey, right? It's kind of analog. It like kind of has those things in it. And there's a scene, like I have my IMDb open right now, and it's one of the pictures on the IMDb, and I have been like freaking myself out the entire time we've been having this conversation, because like it's just fucking Samara staring at me. Like it's so, here, I'm gonna send it to you right now.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, man.
Well, actually, I don't know if IMDb lets me copy easily, but it's just the creepiest fucking thing in the world. She just she looks like a coming through like a snowy videotape, but she's looking right at you, and it's just so well designed. It's creepy as shit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the reason why her movement seems so arresting at the beginning is that this is a guess, and I might be wrong, but I think that the actor is climbing backwards into the well, and I think that they reverse the tape when they show it. The reason I say this,
that would make sense. Yeah.
The reason I say this, number one, it just looks unnatural in a certain way, but number two, her hair actually creeps up over the edge of the well.
That's so good.
Which is awesome, but also the physical way you do that is you have her climb backwards down into the well, and then her hair would drape over the lip and then fall down, and then when you reverse that, then it would look like the hair crawls up by itself. So again, might be over-interpreting that detail, but
no, I think you're spot on there. I just watched the scene again. By the way, I have goosebumps right now. Just talking about this shit is creeping me out because I have such a clear image of what this looks in my head.
That's how you know it's good, because normally when you like overexpose, I mean, obviously there's a certain amount that you can like overexpose a scary thing and then it stops being scary again. Mm-hmm. In fact, this is what I tend to do when I'm like really upset by a scary movie, is I will just like look at all of the scary pictures until they're just boring. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this picture you've sent me is very creepy. What is it? It's perfect. What is it about this? I don't even know.
It's looking right at the lens is the first thing, right?
Yeah,
which
that's
is
true.
That is inherently unnerving when a thing you're looking at is looking back at you. And then it's the coloring of her skin, it's the fierceness of her brow, it's the hair covering only one of the eyes, it's the shallow depth of field. You see, like behind her, everything is out of focus, so like everything is just focused on her. It's just brilliant. And Verbinski, like, I know we haven't said his name very much during this, but like he's behind all of this, right? Like he's behind all of this, and it's so fucking good.
Yeah. What's funny is it's all of the exact same good things we said about like Mouse Hunt, except aimed at a different target.
Right.
But working just as well on that target.
You're so right. I mean, it's like this could not be a movie further away from the movie that Mouse Hunt is, but it's the same understanding of story and film employed in that genre and doing so perfectly.
Right. I mean, this is the thing that I'm interested to talk about with Verbinski, because the only thing we've talked about which you could consider a complaint would be the thematic inconsistency, you could say. You could in a critical frame, you could call it thematic inconsistency,
which I'm pretty sure they like is out of their hands in like 3 levels, because I'm pretty sure the book ends that way. I'm pretty sure the original Japanese film ends that way. And
he didn't write it. He didn't write the script, right? And so that's the thing. That's the thing that I'm interested to get to with some of the later Verbinski movies that I have more mixed feelings about, where it's like he's so good that he can take like a script that even has what you could call serious problems and still make a sort of instant classic, genre defining movie. But there's a limit.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a limit, but I think probably there's got to be. I don't know. See, here's the thing. I don't know if I've said this on our Verbinski podcast, but like I don't think I cared for the second and third Pirates movies.
Oh, we'll see, buddy.
I guess we will. I mean, I'll probably have a totally different opinion after, more focusing on the direction, but that's just something that's something where I've been this whole time kind of wondering like what that's going to be like when we get there. But yes,
no, it's going to be fun. But yeah, I mean, I guess the one thing I want to do before we end this conversation is I want to talk about my new metaphor, because like we went the long way around to get to this, but this is my metaphor. I think this movie, instead of being like a screed against our obsession with television and communicating through television. I like this as a metaphor for like the dying grasp of analog in a digital world, right? This is a movie that we're right on the cusp, right? 2002, right? The internet is out, but it hasn't become ubiquitous. Cell phones are not a thing that like everyone is using. The smartphone is still a few years away. So like we're at this point. Streaming hasn't happened yet. DVDs are out, but like tapes are still common enough that most people have a VCR. We're at this shift to digital from analog, and this movie feels like, if you look at it as, here is analog in its dying breath saying no, saying you will continue to listen to me. Like, I'm not going anywhere. In fact, I'm going to force myself to propagate myself, right? Like it becomes this little fascinating kind of reflection on the existence of analog. And it's like this, the thing about this movie is I think it only works in a tape. I think there was a movie that came out in 2017 called Rings, and I think they tried to do what probably sounded like a good idea when you're sitting in a boardroom, of saying, hey, wouldn't The Ring be an interesting movie to do in the world of YouTube? And the answer is no. Because I didn't bother to see Rings, but like the reviews were so bad, like so bad. I was like, But like this only works with a VCR, with a VHS tape, with a home phone that's gonna ring spookily right after it. It only works in this point in time. It only works with this thing. Like just the examining of the tape, right? The tactile, like actually pushing the tape over to see a little bit of the track that was recorded that isn't displaying on the TV. Like all these things are physical. Like that. I think you're absolutely what led me to this conversation 30 minutes ago when I was trying to get to it and we got sidetracked, was Verbinski's choice to the knobs and the buttons. And these are analog things. They're actually doing something. When you're turning the knob to rewind the tape, you're actually rewinding a tape, right? Like these are all physical analog things. And it's such a core part of what this movie is. It doesn't function without it. And I mean, so that becomes the interesting metaphor to me, like this completely extra textual metaphor of the dying grasp, the dying scream, the dying demand of a thing that has completely left our lives now.
I like this a lot. I'm also, the scene where she rips the tape out of the tape player and throws it and it goes skidding under the couch. Like, just imagine that, except imagine it's like a DVD and how pathetic that would feel. Like that would just feel like nothing.
Well, and then at the very end, when we return to that scene where she destroys the first copy, where she rips it up and throws it, and you have the actual physical burning of the magnetic tape, and then she remembers that she has the copy under the, which is it's just a beautiful. Verbinski did such a good job planting that seed with the copy under the couch.
That was another thing I kind of noticed. And maybe I'm misinterpreting the movie actually, but when she tells the father that, like, where she found the tape, that was a moment where I was like, oh, he asks if she made a copy because he knows that that's how you survive.
Yeah, presumably that's what he did, right? Yeah, like he made a copy himself.
He made the copy and he left it at the place. Like he was the one who did that. Was my reading, but that, like, I also like that that's not like explained. It's just that's
you just make the assumption that's and he's feeling the guilt of that because he's realizing, oh my god, like it's a ring, it's all coming back to me. And that's why he kills himself in the most on the like. I love this movie, but the scene where he's like got 6 TVs in his bathroom and like kills himself by electrocuting himself to the TVs. I'm like, okay, we get it, movie. TV bad. We get it.
Yeah,
we get it.
Yeah, that's great. I love the Speaking of me not being in the room when watching this movie the first time, I just had no memory at all of the little room at the top of her of the barn, the little creepy room at the top of the barn. I just didn't remember that. I was like, I've never seen this before, and
It's
I thought
delightful.
It's great. It's
way too fucking high. Like it's just way too fucking high, and it's the the dinkiest ladder ever. It's terrifying.
Yeah. It's the tiny little ladder, which you remember from the video. You see the ladder, and then you see the ladder fall.
Oh yeah, so you're thinking the entire time they're climbing the ladder that like that's the amazing thing is there's also a scene, and I think Verbinski did this on purpose, where they see the tree behind the wallpaper and they rip it all off, and they start stepping backwards to like take it all in to be far enough away, and they're like walking to the edge of the thing, and I'm sitting here like you're awfully close to the edge of this whole loft, and it's very far down, and yeah, we saw the ladder fall. Yeah, I mean, like it's part of what's lulling you into this false sense of they tortured this poor girl and abused this poor girl, right? Because like that existence sounds absolutely miserable, but of course the reason they put her up there is she was torturing her mother, and then decided to torture the horses,
right? Basically driving insane everyone around her. Hey, if you want to like ruin this and make it not scary for yourself, I suggest like reading the Wikipedia articles about like Samara's backstory.
Oh my god.
I'm not even going to say it because I don't want to ruin the movie for anyone, but there's no reason it should ruin the movie. It's just like I did this to myself, and then I was like, it's like explaining a magic trick. You're just like, oh, like I'll just give you a sampler. Anytime you take something as incredibly creepy as the scene where all of the nails are like backing themselves out of the wood, and water is leaking up from under it under extreme close up, and like there's somehow a living fly underneath the nail head, which then flies away, and then you use the word hydrokinesis to describe that.
God damn it. That's infuriating.
Yeah. Well, anyway, God, that was a great scene too, wasn't it? Where she's down and they're under the house, and then everything starts ripping itself apart.
Oh, it's so good.
That's great.
And you're just wondering, how's it going to happen? And of course, it's the TV knocking her. It's so good. So it's interesting. We've been talking about these Japanese film. Another one that I remembered is a film called Dark Water, actually, that I saw the American remake of, that came out not long after The Ring, I think. But The Ring 2, we was directed by the guy who directed the Japanese Ring and The Ring 2. And it's awful. it's okay. I did see the Ring 2, the American Ring 2. It had Naomi Watts comes back. So does David Dorfman, who plays Little Boy. They both come back, and it's a terrible, awful movie. Which is part of the reason I didn't end up seeing Rings, which came out 12 years later. But it's interesting that it was directed by the original director.
That is. But I guess this is what happens in the horror genre is people will make sequels when a movie is successful, but this was definitely one that should not have had a sequel.
I agree. Can we talk about this is a total tangent, but I want to rant about The Grudge for a second here.
Sure.
You said you saw that one.
I have seen it. I don't remember like anything about it, but I think I would remember if you started saying things. But yes, please go on.
I mean, the thing that cracks me up about The Grudge is the Grudge is a movie. It was a Japanese movie first, just like The Ring, and so like in The Ring, they took this Japanese movie and they said they were going to make an English version language because Americans don't read subtitles, so we have to make an English language version. With The Grudge, they were like, okay, we're going to do the same thing, but like we want to be a little bit nicer to Japan, so we're still going to set it in Japan. But then they're like, but we can't possibly have an Asian woman as our main character, so we have to cast this blonde, which is Sarah Michelle Gellar, who I love Sarah Michelle Gellar, but they're just like, we got to cast this blonde woman who's a foreign exchange student to come over and be the main character because Americans cannot identify with anyone other than the blonde woman.
It's a horror movie. You got to get the blonde woman. I mean, this movie also has
Yeah, I know. It's just it cracks me up that The Grudge is like trying to be like, no, see, we're paying homage to the place that this story originated, but we're still a white blonde lady. It just cracks me up.
Yeah. Yep. I might have seen Dark Water too, now that you mentioned that movie, though.
Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah. I think I did see Dark Water.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was scary, and I wiped it out of my mind because I don't do well. Scary movies. I hope we never have to watch another scary movie on the Doofcast ever again.
I don't know. I don't know.
I'm sure we will at some point.
We will at some point. Yes. I think that's it for Gore Verbinski and for The Ring, right? I don't have anything else.
Yeah, there was one shot I wanted to mention where the father and son run into each other on the street, and the son lifts up the umbrella and they kind of just look at each other, and you don't know who they are to each other at that point. But what's interesting is it sticks in your head because you're like, what the hell is that? And then later you get the context and you realize like, oh shit.
Yeah, they both know.
They both know. They both know exactly, and they don't say anything to each other. And like, that's such an interesting filmmaking, because if I were making a movie, I would assume that if I showed a bizarre scene like 30 minutes before explaining what that scene was, that the viewer would have forgotten already. But no, that's the first thing you think of when you realize that's his son, is you think of them running into each other, awkwardly looking at each other, saying nothing, and then moving on. I just thought that was very, very cool filmmaking choice that I never quite seen anything like that anywhere else.
See, Verbinski gave him what they wanted in the first 15 minutes, and so he got to do whatever he wants, which is plant a seed 30 minutes before it pays off.
Yeah.
Boom.
So good. That was it. That was my last point.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it's sad that like it's very clear that he was going to try to be a dad to his kid after this experience, and then dies.
Yeah. It is very sad. It is very sad. And
the movie literally ends on a note of they're just going to propagate this further.
Yeah.
And like so many people are going to die.
They're just going to show the tape to somebody else.
Yeah.
And which of course is going to give them horrible lifelong guilt about what they've done. I also, Naomi Watts just allows her ex's girlfriend to just go up into his room and see his horrifying, like basically mutilated body. That's another thing that happens at the end of this movie.
Yeah, I mean, okay, like that's not great, but like to be fair, like what does she do in that moment? I
mean, sure, I'm not holding it against her. It's just the moment that the film chooses to subject you to.
It chooses to watch her actively make that choice, to like see her coming and slink away and hide and allow her that moment.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep, that's it.
All right. Well, that is The Ring. I think surprisingly my favorite of these three movies so far. I think this is at the top of my list right now.
See, I don't like scary movies that much, but this is an incredibly well-made movie. So I'll just say I can see why you would say that.
Fair. All right. Well, do you know what our next Verbinski movie is?
I forgot.
It's time for the Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, the longest title of all time. I'm excited though. I'm excited. It's all been building to this. This is, isn't it? I don't know. Like, so looking at this man's career, and that we might save most of this conversation for next time, but he makes a moderately successful family comedy. He makes a gangster dark comedy, and then he makes a horror film, and Disney goes, yes.
Yeah.
You make our $200 million big budget Pirates movie. I think, though, to be fair, there are moments in Pirates where I think Verbinski is getting to use a little bit of his horror chops. It's not a horror movie, but there are creepy parts of it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, more than a few, I would say. I mean, he's definitely leaning hard into the fact that these are scary skeleton pirates.
Yeah.
especially in the beginning half when you don't quite understand what's going on.
Yeah,
like I mean, God, there's a lot. This is a great movie. I always say, like, the Pirates came out in 2003. Like, if you came to me in early 2003 and were like, there's going to be a movie, it's going to be based on the Pirates of the Caribbean theme park ride at Disney, it's going to cost $200 million to make. Do you think this is going to be a good or successful movie? I would have laughed in your face. I would have bet money that it was going to tank and be a bad movie. And so this is just this is one of the things I'm always remembering when we're talking about, like, like Ant-Man 7 or whatever, and I'm like everything about this sounds stupid, but I've been so wrong in the past about stuff like this. You really can't possibly know, I think, is the answer. So anyway, that was a tangent for me to just say this movie has no right to be as good as it is. It's a great movie. I've been excited to talk about it pretty much since we started this. So
yeah, me too. So that'll be I think next week. Actually, we're gonna jump right into it because we can't wait. So yeah, that'll be Pirates of the Caribbean, the culmination of Gore Verbinski's career up until this point, and it's gonna be huge. So we'll do that next time.
All right.
All right, Matt, we have a few things to take care of before we leave for the week. The first being the results of last week's poll about In Bruges being entered into the Doof canon of the greatest films of all time. It was a good episode. It was a good discussion. And now we'll see if we were convincing.
And I have no idea, so I'm eagerly awaiting to hear the result.
Well, with a percentage of 92 to 8, yes, In Bruges was entered into the Doof canon. This was a very popular movie amongst our listeners, and I think it's well earned, right?
Yeah, that makes me very happy to hear. Seems like everyone agrees. It seems like Michael was able to successfully persuade everyone of his position. Again. We have
this
two.
Is the second list of canon films that In Bruges belongs to.
Yep, it's that good, folks.
It is. I also learned we got some feedback and some information from folks on the episode. Sending someone to Coventry, which was something we talked about in the episode where they were talking about where they could have been sent instead of Bruges, and then Colin Farrell says really quietly, or Coventry. Apparently, sending someone to Coventry is a British idiom meaning to ostracise a person. So it just becomes even more brilliant.
It does. See, that's like double clever.
It is.
What's also funny is I know somebody from Coventry, and so it's basically like saying they're from the middle of nowhere, I guess.
I guess so. Yeah, I don't. The origins of this phrase are unknown, although it is quite probable the events in Coventry in the English Civil War of the 1640s played a part. So we don't really know.
Yeah, those events.
Those events. Yeah, those are terrible events.
We're all familiar with the tale of Coventry.
The feedback we got on this episode was all positive about the movie, of course, because 92% of our listeners liked it. We didn't hear anything from the percentage of folks that didn't vote for it. I can't even speculate what about the movie just didn't do it for them.
Yeah,
but it was largely positive. Some people talked about how this is now one of their must-see movies at Christmas time, which is delightful. I'd never thought of the movie that way, but
yeah, people were discussing how it is a Christmas movie.
It is. Technically, yeah.
Yeah, very little runtime is spent explaining that it is Christmas time, but of course it is Christmas time, and then there's all the religious themes which make it very solidly a Christmas movie.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about how it's clear that the owner of the hotel is Mary as well, and we totally just glossed over the fact that the reason they're staying at that hotel and not a better hotel is because it's Christmas time and there are no rooms at the inn, which is just delightful. What a delightful movie.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, I think people talked about how one of the great things about this movie is no matter what layer and level you look at it on, it's fulfilling and satisfying and great. And I think that is reflected in our conversation because like you and I, as we tend to do, got like really deep and metaphorical with it. And Michael's just come in like, this is funny because it's a vacation movie and they hate each other, which I mean, and not to diminish that at all. I think it's part of what makes the movie work and makes the movie one of the all timers, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. Like something that Michael said last week really resonated, which was he spends, he doesn't watch the movie for a while. He starts to wonder, was that really as good as I remember? Because when you think back on it, maybe you just remember the silly jokes and the profanity, and you watch it again and you realize, like you just said, the layers and the depth and just like the sheer enjoyment and how it sucks you in so many different ways. It's really surprising. Like it is kind of hard to remember, because it's always hard to remember something that is good because it is complex.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I don't remember. I can't store information that way, I guess, in my brain. So,
well, I just feel like the complexity flattens over time the longer you've seen it. So, like, I mean, I hadn't watched the movie since we did the episode on it 3 or 4 years ago, whatever. And yeah, I once again just found it delightful. So
yeah, I mean,
I think that makes a thing rewatchable, right?
I mean, I think another funny thing about it is that it sort of grows with you, and like stuff like the scene where they're looking at the Bosch painting, I believe it is. I think that maybe when I was younger, I just thought that was boring and I didn't really get it. And now it's like funny and clever, and like you're paying attention to the subtleties of the acting and the things that they're communicating without words. And I was actually just like laughing during the scene where they're just looking at the painting, and it's like, what's the joke? Like, what are you laughing at, Matt? It's like, God, I can't explain exactly. It's just great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
wonderful. All right. So that's In Bruges. It is now on our list. And speaking of that list, I'm going to say it here, and so I have to stick with it. By this time next month, there will be a page on the website that has each and every single movie that has been successfully voted onto the Doof canon, and a short blurb written by yours truly as to why it is there. This is my pledge, my vow, my oath. A man's got to stick by his principles, Matt, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now you've said it in a slightly more serious way than last time. So.
Oh God, I'm not gonna do it, am I?
How about just, if you don't do it, then I get to say to you that you've forgotten the face of your father.
Okay, that's honestly very fair.
Okay,
that might be the only thing that gets me to finally do it.
Okay, all right.
Doof. All right. Before we went for the week, we just had a few things we wanted to talk about. The first, I think, is your thing. So please explain your thing, Matt, because I don't think I can.
So, it's a fairly popular niche internet thing. So, okay. I mean, I honestly don't know how many people have heard of it and how many have not. But
are you talking about Doof Media?
No, I'm talking about a Warhammer 40K fan film called Astartes on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube, or you can find it on like the Games Workshop website. And the thing, there's a bunch of things that I wanted to talk about, actually. So like number one, so like the video is only like 13 minutes long. It's got no dialogue, basically, essentially no dialogue. It is incredibly well executed, and I want to talk about the details of how well executed it is. But the asterisk on that is it was entirely made by one man. It was released in like 2-minute episodes, actually. And each of the 2-minute episodes, I think, took him like 3 months or something.
Sounds about right, yeah.
So just incredibly well done. Like you watch it and you're like, oh, this is like a really excellent, well done, story-wise, tone-wise, audio editing, the sound effects, the cinematography in terms of where the camera's moving, the cutting, the number of shots, which is, you use the word cutting in this context, it's CGI, so it's like just the thought put into the shots, the thought put into the lighting, the fact that it's basically a 13-minute long action scene means there's a huge amount of like complicated information that has to be communicated visually. Like it's just incredibly well done on like every front that you can make a thing, and it was made by one person. And I think this is awesome. I think this ties back to stuff I've said before on this program where I've said like someday you're going to be able to make something as good as like a Marvel movie on your computer in an afternoon. Of course, we're not there yet. That's not what Astartes is, but what Astartes is one person making something really damn good, by themselves in a long period of time, admittedly.
Yeah. It's so you sent me the link to this thing and I watched it. I want to put the caveat in here that I have never played Warhammer 40K. I know nothing about the lore of the game. Absolutely nothing except for there's Space Marine people. Like I recognized that look of the Warhammer 40K Space Marines. And I don't think you need to understand any of that to watch this thing. I think it's like there were parts where I'm like, I wonder if this is a reference to something I'm not getting, and then you told me it wasn't, so I was like, oh, okay. But it's functional outside of it. I mean, the thing that most impressed me with this thing is that fact that it's just some guy that said, I want to do this, and I think that's really cool. I think you sent me a trailer for a Star Wars fan film a couple weeks ago that it's like of similar fidelity, at least. Like it looked like it could pass. I mean, there's moments in it you can tell it's a lower budget film. Like you can tell with like lighting sometimes in lower budget films they just don't have as good of lighting, and because they don't do as much color correction in post and all this stuff. But remarkably high fidelity of a production for a fan film, and I think there's something like remarkable about that in general. That like you know, we live in a society in which like films exist to make money. That is a truth of our world, and every movie, big or small, was created because someone said, I believe I can make some money off of this. That doesn't mean every creator in the project is there to make money, but at the bottom line is that the money to go into the project usually is because they're hoping that they get more money out of the project. But these things are interesting because like this guy that made this thing you're talking about did not make this thing because he wanted to sell it. Like he made this thing because he really liked this game and he really liked animating, and he said, hey, I want to make a thing. Yeah.
Right. He liked the setting. I mean, same thing goes for the Star Wars fan film, is that like in both cases, people are using existing IP. And I think they know correctly that more people are going to watch their thing if they use the existing IP. Yeah. But they can't actually really be paid fairly for it, right? Like by definition,
they like more people might see it because they're using existing IP, but by definition, they will never make a cent off of it because they literally are legally not able to.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's very cool. I mean, I personally have done a lot of things where I did them mainly just because I had to be in my bonnet. Like I just had to make this thing. It. You know, I've never done anything, admittedly, that took me several months to a year of like hard work that was basically for nothing. I don't know if that's true, actually. Like, it's not like I play guitar for money, like in order to become good enough to perform and make money. It's like, that's just a hobby. But I don't really think of making an incredibly high fidelity Warhammer 40K fan film as just a hobby. That's another level.
Yeah, I mean, like there's fan fiction exists, right? And fan fiction is a huge thing that many people do. But this is like a step above fan fiction, and not to diminish the hard work that people put into their fan fiction, but this is like fan fiction plus.
Yeah,
like it is creating a story within an existing world and then putting in the time and effort to make it look professionally done. Like to like. This thing would look at home in a Warhammer 40K video game. Like it would look fine as a cutscene in a AAA Warhammer game. And like it is cool that like as technology increases, it is feasible for people to do these things. Like I think you have very recently fallen in love with Billie Eilish and her brother, and these are two artists that completely recorded and mixed their original studio album in their house, in their room in their parents' house, because the equipment and the things that are available these days are the cheapest they've ever been and the most widely accessible as they've ever been. And that's cool. And the potential for that is really, really exciting, I think.
Yeah, they're another great example where, I mean, obviously there's a lot of like talent, like human talent there, but it is only now that human talent can be turned directly into an album via a laptop.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think they literally did it in their bedroom, right? So it's not even like they had like a studio. Like it was just, you know, elbow grease and a laptop. And that's awesome. Like, I see this as being extremely good, like extremely good for art, for the future of art and where we're going with things. You know, that just we're going to get so many more cool things that are being made, and they're going to be in some sense more creative, and in some senses I think just better. Like I've complained repeatedly and perhaps ad nauseum about the fact that like they'll spend $100 million making a movie, and like you could have just read the script and known that it was going to be a bad movie. And I'm like how does this happen? You know, and it's like, I think the cheaper it gets to make movies, the less likely anybody, like nobody's going to spend $100 million on a movie. Like at a certain point, right?
Yeah.
Like at a certain point, it's going to be absurd to imagine that you would spend $100 million making a 2-hour sequence of images on your screen, because it will be so easy to do that. It'll be so cheap to do that. Like the only thing that will cost money will be like the stars, right? And then at a certain point, we'll have like deep fakes, and then it's all over. I mean, we already have deep fakes. We'll just have good enough deep fakes.
Really good. Yeah. I mean, like at a time where, you know, studios are consolidating and the future of film is uncertain, it's also incredibly exciting because the future of film is wide open. It has never been cheaper to make a movie than it is right now. And that is amazing. And the potential of that, like there have been, you know, student films and fan films and these things, you know, since you could buy a camera, but the fidelity at which those productions could be created were never good enough because they couldn't be. And now we're getting to the point where they can be, that a fan, an artist, has the technology sitting on their desk to create something like this, that someone can buy out and go out and buy a few $1,000 camera that is as good as a camera that you would use to shoot a movie,
right?
In Hollywood. And it's really cool. It's really exciting. Like it makes me excited for the future of film. And like it's really funny because I have to get over myself sometimes, and I'm going to be brutally honest about myself here. Like the first time you sent me this thing, the first time you sent me the Star Wars trailer, my first response was, why would you do that when you don't have any hope to ever like leverage this into something? Like, why would you spend this much time on a thing if you don't have any hope on leveraging that into something monetarily or career-wise or what have you, right? And that's not a good reaction of me to have. Like, I need to get over that.
Well,
and
I mean, I think it's just sort of an expression of like the fact of the matter is that you're basically right, except I think it's weirdly easier for people to make fan things because everybody already loves it and they're already passionate.
Sure.
And so you can get their buy-in much more easily than if you were just like, hey guys, I have an idea for a space movie. You know, who's going to be like, yeah, I'm on board. Like, no, they want to make X-Wings.
Also, I mean, like writing a story within a pre-established world. I mean, that's why fan fiction exists, right? Is because the blank page is daunting, but if you have a world that you can throw some ideas into, an existing world already, that is a lot. I don't want to say easier because I don't want to diminish the hard work people do, but it's just like it's less daunting.
Yeah.
To say, I have a story I want to tell about person X and person Y. I understand the world of Star Wars, and I can tell that story within this world.
So just to be along those lines, not only is it no longer a blank page, but, and I don't know this, but you know, the universe of 3D assets is actually vast. So it's entirely possible that it literally takes much less work to make a Star Wars fan film because you can download the 3D asset of the Star Destroyers and X-Wings and TIE Fighters and all the lighting packs and just like make that very easily because it's already basically there. And then you put in all of the effort into making sure the animation is good and making sure the story is good. And then also, similarly, it's probably cheaper to buy a really, really nice Stormtrooper costume than it is to like make your own original, really, really cool and nice fabricated piece of costuming.
Yeah.
And so it's so yes, like in a sense, it is economically easier to make a Star Wars fan film than it is to make your own creative thing.
Yeah.
And yet, like, at some point it will be really easy to make like a new creative spaceship asset in, Blender 12.8 or whatever. I don't know what version of Blender we're on right now, honestly, but like it'll be possible. And then I think we'll see like another tier where some individual could make their own like space movie, which is wholly original. And I don't again, like maybe the guy who made Astartes was also taking advantage of the fact that a lot of assets had already been built. I don't know.
Yeah, I very possible. I mean, that's an incredible point. I totally agree with that. Yeah. Just every aspect of production that is just a giant pain in the ass becomes easier if this stuff pre-exists. I mean, just imagine a fantasy story in which you had to create individual costumes for every single one of your people instead of buying an existing costume. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I've had a few ideas for like extremely minor like film projects, and I've gotten to the point of like writing scripts for them. And usually the big roadblock for me is like, oh my God, this is going to cost so much to make these props. Mm-hmm. Like I don't know how to make these props either. So like if you just had the props already, that's a huge bonus, right? So
yeah, definitely. It's an exciting time. This thing was cool. And we'll put a link to the Astartes thing in the show notes for those that haven't seen it to give it a watch. I'm sure many of our listeners already have. This feels like something that I just missed the boat on that I shouldn't have.
Well, I mean, I've been a Warhammer 40K fan for a long time, and I actually saw this a while ago, and then I just happened to cross it again, and I just, for some reason, it struck me a lot harder this time. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's very, very impressive. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. I think my thing I wanted to talk about briefly, I guess, is kind of semi-related to this.
Cool.
Because earlier this week, it was announced that AT&T, current owner of Warner Media Group, which consists of HBO and the entire studio of Warner Brothers, which owns everything DC and a whole lot of other stuff, AT&T is getting rid of them. They are going to sell them to the Discovery Media Group, which owns HGTV, Food Network. Basically any reality TV network you can think of is owned by Discovery, and they have their own streaming service called Discovery Plus as well. Well, AT&T is going to spin off the Warner Media Group and sell it to Discovery for $43 billion, I think it was. This is a big deal, Matt. I think just 3 years ago, AT&T made a huge play by buying Time Warner for $84 billion. Mm-hmm. And then 3 years later said, nope, we're done. Uh-huh. We're out. We're definitely going to take a loss on this deal, even if it goes through. It's really fascinating, especially in like we've had many conversations about the streaming landscape in our world. And I mean, one of the big things that AT&T did when they bought Warner was create what is now HBO Max. That was one of their big plays, is they were going to take all this property and combine it into HBO Max. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of a bungled launch because they didn't do a good job of explaining the difference between all the different HBOs, and it was very confusing. And I think by all accounts, HBO Max is doing okay now, but I think what we're seeing here is we're living in a world in which, let's look at the big players in the streaming market, right? Mm-hmm. We have Apple, the richest company in the world. We have Amazon. Their CEO is the richest human being in the world. We have Disney, the biggest media conglomerate in the world. And then you have Netflix, the company that already has the most eyes on them because they were there first and established. Like, they have just the biggest reach in the world, right? Mm-hmm. So you have these four companies. You cannot compete with them. You can't do it. They're just too much there. Mm-hmm. They can outbid you on anything ever, mm-hmm. because they're Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Disney. So this is wild to me, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
So specifically the fact that they're divesting, or just
all of it. I mean, you can situation. Start there.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, I don't remember. I feel like we might have commented at the time on the merger. I just think it's interesting how, like, it reminds me of like the 80s, when all of the fiction from the 80s was about how, like, all the science fiction, I mean, was about like a future where there was like one company, because all of the companies had merged together, because that's what was happening during the 80s.
Yeah.
And like and then like it seemed like everybody realized that was a bad idea and that wasn't working, because
Yeah.
a lot of companies merged, and then the value was destroyed essentially in the merger. And it's funny because it kind of seems like that sort of thing has been happening lately, where these media companies are buying each other and merging and conglomerating. And sometimes it turns out to be a really good idea, but sometimes it seems like it has been a horrible idea.
Yeah. I mean,
this is one of those cases, obviously.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, AT&T had no foray into the entertainment industry. This was it. Like they're a telecom company that said, okay, we want to get in on this, and we're going to do it by buying one of the biggest pieces of the market we can. And I think there was a lot of culture shock there. I think the HBO team dealing with the AT&T team, there was a lot of animosity. There were people that stepped down. Like, HBO has for so long been the prestige TV network, right? They kind of created the idea of prestige TV, honestly. And when they launched HBO Max, they really wanted it to be not that. They wanted to have that, but they wanted to try to do the Netflix model, which is like Netflix has prestige shows on it, but Netflix also survives by the 700 pieces of shit content they produce, like The Circle, the reality TV show, all the competition shows, The Floor is Lava, like that kind of stuff is Netflix's bread and butter, and it's what brings in the viewers and it's what brings in the money. And HBO doesn't like that stuff. And like, if you look at HBO Max, they kind of tried with that, but there was definitely some internal conflict there. And I think part of this is AT&T realizing, oh, we don't want to be part of this, actually.
Yeah.
It's not making us the money we thought it was going to.
Yeah, I think they just misunderstood like what it was that they were buying and what they could expect to get out of it.
Yeah.
It is really interesting. Because like, you have these four mega companies, but they're essentially in competition with each other. And so it's funny because I wish I could remember clearly what we have said about this in the past, because I remember conversations a few years ago, maybe literally 3 years ago, actually, where we were sort of wondering amongst ourselves, like, who's going to win this? Is it going to be Prime? Is it going to be Netflix? And what's funny now is like that conversation is kind of not happening anymore. It's like, no, these are just the players now, and they're apparently America has demonstrated that America is willing to spend $10 for Netflix and $10 for Amazon Prime Video, and maybe also $10 for Apple TV and HBO Max and Hulu. like apparently it's working. It's been working, right? I think there were a few quarters back then where it was like, oh dear God, like they're hemorrhaging money. How are they going to survive? And now it kind of seems, I mean, maybe some of these companies still aren't going to make it, but it just seems like everything has reached this like stasis point.
I mean, my prediction is we're going to see more consolidation amongst the mid-tier streaming companies. Your Paramount Pluses, your AMC Pluses, your Peacocks. Like, I think those can't make it in the long run. And I think they will merge. Like, it's wild to me to envision a future in which like the NBC service and the CBS service merge, and those two giant companies merge. But I think that's possible. I think you're right that like we're not going to see these big corporations that own everything happen, but I think within the entertainment corporation universe, we're going to see some big mergers. Like, I would not be surprised if you saw a Comcast and a Viacom like announcement very soon that like these companies are going to start to say the only way we can compete with the big dogs is by becoming them.
I mean, they could. So there's two options basically. Like you said, either they merge and they try to actually compete on an even footing with your Disneys and your Amazons, or they sell all of their IP. They basically say they tap out. They say we can't compete with you, we're going to sell all of our IP to, you know, HBO or Disney or whatever. And they might get a really good deal on that. Like maybe somebody be willing to pay a huge amount of money for their IP, and then they have that cash and they can do something more up their, you know, up their corporate alley with that money. But just sort of continuing to try to monetize the IP in an environment where they're not really going to be able to do that is a bad idea. So yeah, I think one way or the other, it all kind of amounts to the same thing in the end, which is an increasingly small handful of streaming platforms holding all of the IP.
Yeah. I think that's where we're headed. And the wild thing to me is Apple, who seems to be the outsider in this conversation. Like, Disney Plus is huge, right? It's huge. It's wildly successful. Netflix is kicking ass. Amazon is just like doing their thing. I don't understand Amazon's model in the streaming market, honestly, because like, I guess they just know that you're going to keep Prime because of the shipping deal.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know anyone who makes a conscious decision to subscribe to Prime for a show. And they've had a lot of, like, there's been a lot of good television on Prime. There's the new Barry Jenkins TV show, Underground Railroad, just came out this past week, and they dropped all 10 episodes at once, which I wish they hadn't done that, but that's besides the point. I don't understand their model, but they're good. And Apple, like, I don't know if Apple has released any information about how many people are subscribed to their service. And I don't know how much they care, because they have so much fucking money.
Yeah.
They could lose $1.5 billion a month on this service, and they'd be, yeah, we're fine.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, and Apple is like slowly and kind of very quietly amassing this incredible library of very popular shows. I think when they first announced their thing, they were touting these big names and big stars, and that was going to be their ticket. Like, look, we're doing morning show, and we've got Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer Aniston, and look, we've got this show and this show. And then quietly, the things that have been catching fire at Apple are not any of those. Ted Lasso is their biggest hit. And I know Jason Sudeikis is a pretty good star, but like, no one would have predicted that. Like, they have another show called Mythic Quest, which is very good and very funny. They have that Wolfwalkers animated movie that did very well. They've got the Billie Eilish documentary, Matt, which I've been wanting you to watch, but you don't have Apple TV Plus.
That's true. Yeah.
They've got the Shyamalan television show Servant. They've got they bought one of the films that came out of Sundance this year that's supposed to be great. They're just like slowly and quietly amassing all this really, really great stuff. And it's wild.
Yeah, I'm probably going to end up doing it eventually. It's funny how, like, so I was going to say this when you were talking about HBO Max earlier, which is the thing that got me to subscribe to HBO Max finally was Justice League. So, which is both hilarious and an interesting point, which is that like everybody, I think, including me, says to themselves, like, yeah, like that all sounds very cool, but I'm just probably not gonna. I'm probably never gonna subscribe to Apple Plus or whatever it's called. And then they're gonna come out with something that I just have to watch, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing is, like, maybe for some person, that thing that you just have to watch was one of those things that you just mentioned. Maybe for me, they're gonna do some sci-fi thing, and which is my kryptonite. And I'm gonna be like, well, shit, okay, and then you know everybody's gonna be talking about it, and it's gonna be, you're gonna tell me it's you know better than Breaking Bad, and I'm gonna be like, okay, fuck, I guess I have to get Apple TV. So like they, I think it's just interesting to me that now I'm kind of realizing like it's not really possible to make, like, obviously they want to make the next Game of Thrones, where like everybody in America is watching it. But more realistically, they're going to make the next like Stranger Things or something, where it's like a lot of people talk about it really glowingly, and it has a very strong niche appeal. And then the next cycle, they make another Community, or you know.
That's a bad example because nobody watched that show.
Yeah, I mean, I was reaching for like a very popular but still kind of niche comedy.
I would say Schitt's Creek is
a good one. Yeah, that's a good example because that'll appeal to a totally different segment of people, and then you'll sort of get the population segment by segment, and then they sign up, and then once you're paying them $10 a month, you just kind of forget about that, and you do that for the rest of your life.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, it's like the model, we talked about this years ago, but the model that everyone thought they were convinced was like you get the Friends and you get The Office, and then people stay subscribed to you forever because they never want to stop watching Friends or The Office. And I think the thing that we've learned is people don't pick up the service for that. They bought Netflix for something else, and Netflix had The Office, and so they watched it constantly.
Right. Exactly.
But that's not a subscription seller. And I mean, like, yourself aside, it was very clear to HBO Max that Justice League was not a subscription seller either, because nobody watched that fucking thing. Nobody watched it.
Well,
like 6 people watched it, and I'm talking to one of them.
Uh-huh.
So it could very well be, Matt, that the reason AT&T said "fuck this, we're out" is because nobody fucking watched Justice League.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the Justice League fiasco by itself may have been a part of this, right?
Sure.
Like the fact that they spent $150 million recutting a movie.
It was only 80.
Oh, yeah, right.
Let's be fair here.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's be fair. It was only $80 million recutting a movie, which of course is a joke because they didn't recut it. They like said they were going to recut it, and then they like basically refilmed the whole thing.
They made a whole new movie. Yes.
And like that seems like the kind of thing where either you're going to fire a bunch of really important people, or you're just going to be like, you know what? Good luck to you all. Sayonara. Have fun over at a different company because this is just not working out as a business relationship.
Yeah, I mean, HBO's, like, Warner is the one that made the announcement that all their stuff was coming to HBO the day and date of theaters, right? Like, that was the big thing, and that, I guess, maybe AT&T thought that would move subscriptions too, and I'm sure it did, but not enough, clearly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm definitely I'm going to just pay extra money for Dune. Like, I'll just buy like 4 tickets for Dune when Dune comes out, but that's a while from now. So
yes, I mean, there's hope because Godzilla vs. Kong did very well in the theaters, very, very well. So
yeah.
We'll see about Dune. I don't know. I don't know what else to say about this other than it's like, when I read the news, I was shocked because that's a big deal. It's a big move. I think it was an angle of this we haven't talked about is that Discovery, I think, made it out like a fucking bandit in this. Like, they got to be thrilled. That's a very profitable but small player that just has their niche and does very well with it. And if you're talking about like having a service that has the prestige things and also has the mindless turn it on and forget about it things, well, that's all just like all the HGTV and Food Network stuff. That's all that. And if you can find a way to, like, you have your Discovery Plus service and you have your HBO Max service, and you pay for one and you get the other, but they're siloed in a way that those two companies don't have to butt heads about what is the right content for our service, what is the culture we want, and what is the type of things we want to produce. Well, that sounds like a win-win.
Yeah, that could work. I mean, it all depends on whether this $30-odd billion price tag is going to be, is going to be recouped by that decision. And
sure.
I mean, you got to hope that they wouldn't have paid that much if they didn't think that it was.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, I will think, I would not be surprised in a couple months we're here talking about a huge merger. Because, like, I look at the Peacock and I look at the Paramount Plus, and I'm just like, how do these companies exist? How many subscribers do these things have?
Yeah, I mean, I constantly forget that those exist. Even every time you even say Peacock, I like laugh internally because I'm like, this is just so silly.
That's like one of the only ones I don't own because I was like, I don't need to do that.
Yeah,
but there's a show on it I really want to watch, so I don't know.
Which one is that?
It's a show called Girls 5 Eva. It's a Tina Fey produced show about a girl group in the 90s. Fast forwarded to 2021. It's one of those Tina Fey-esque comedies that goes a mile a minute. I don't know if you ever watched The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt on Netflix, and it's just like it assaults you with jokes and it's really funny. I watched the first episode because Peacock had the first one free because that's how they fucking get you. It's very funny.
Okay, all right. I do love Tina Fey. So
yeah. So I'd probably not enough to drop money on a Peacock
no
subscription.
No, I'm not going to buy that. No.
But maybe when Peacock is purchased by Disney, Disney will own ABC and NBC. Is Peacock NBC? NBC, yes. And then they'll purchase CBS, and then they'll own everything.
Yeah, and it'll be great. It'll be great.
I mean, there's one thing that consolidation is always good for, and that's the consumer.
Yeah. I mean, up to a certain point, I guess.
No, I was being sarcastic.
I mean, it sort of is until they're a monopoly, and then they can charge whatever they want. So, I mean, because like I don't know. I was just thinking about the fact that I think I literally bought every single Marvel movie independently on Amazon Prime or on Amazon or whatever. I don't know what the words are for these things anymore. And then Disney, like immediately after I did all of that, puts them all on Disney Plus. You can watch them anytime. I'm like, awesome, great.
I mean, that is. I guess you have an argument here that what consolidation. The problem with the streaming services now is there are so many of them, and even if you have a lot of them, because there are so many of them, like knowing when there is new things is really difficult for the average person. Like I have a whole app on my phone that tells me what I can watch where, because like I'll hear about something and I'm like, okay, where the hell do I get that?
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, like the services try, like if you boot up Amazon Prime right now, you'll see they have Underground Railroad everywhere. They're really trying to advertise that thing, but like, there's just so many things and so many avenues to get the things that it's really overwhelming. Like I think one thing we're going to see is that curation is going to become a big deal on these services again. Like I think we're going to do a weird thing where we circle back around to it's kind of like TV again, where they just have channels that are playing things at certain times. And will they also have a library of on-demand things for you to have? Yes, absolutely. But I would not be surprised if they just all have channels. Like Disney has the Marvel channel, and they'll just be rotating some Marvel shit. And they have the Star Wars channel, and they'll just be constantly rotating that shit. Because what people want most out of their TV is to just turn it on and have something there. And they don't have to think about it. That's why they watch The Office again and again. Because instead of sitting here for 15 minutes trying to decide what we want to watch, we can just turn on The Office again and we know we're going to like it. And we're only half paying attention anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Netflix and Disney and really all them do now is like you go to the landing page and it's shoving a bunch of stuff in your face.
Yep.
And you're, Netflix has the egregious autoplay thing, which I hate it, but I also have to admit that sometimes it'll start autoplaying and then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm really, really annoyed that you did that, Netflix, but I'm also kind of intrigued by what you're forcing me to watch.
You got to turn that shit off, man. You got to turn it off.
Oh, you can turn that off in settings?
You can turn it off.
Okay, yes. Well, I need to do that then. But yeah, no, it's but that's why they do it though. They do it because like they know it's annoying, but they do it because it's like the odds, they have their little AI sitting somewhere saying like, well, the odds of person watching thing increase 37% if we do the autoplay. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. We went on way too long about that, but it's
true.
Just something I'm really fascinated about.
All right. Well, I can't wait to see how this all pans out.
Me too. But that's all we had for you folks this week. If you have any opinions on Astartes, I said that right?
Yep.
On this whole huge AT&T sale, anything else we talked about, and of course, The Ring. You can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on Twitter at doofmedia.
Yeah, if you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, then please do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
You can find this and all of our shows over at doofmedia.com. That's where you can find our book club, which is meeting next week to talk about John Scalzi's The Old Man's War. There's no "the" there, just Old Man's War.
Old Man's War.
Yeah. And of course, if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. Head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and donate $5 to get sweet access to a bunch of cool stuff, including our Doof and Chill session, which is happening this Friday, the 21st of May, in which we hang out with our patrons on stream and play some games and just chill. Just chill.
That's right. It's always a fun time. We always have a really great time.
Yeah, but not in a sex way.
No. Maybe only a couple times. Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
That is right. We'll be back here next week to continue with our Deconstructing Verbinski series. It's time, Matt. We're doing pirates.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.